My name is Anna Morrison, and I'm a recovered high school theater kid. I don't know what to tell you. I was hooked. There was just something about that combination of emotional and musical storytelling that just resonated with my adolescent heart to an absurd degree. Unfortunately for me, live theater is scarce when you're growing up in the middle of nowhere, so I mostly just gobbled up cast albums on Spotify and watched totally legal recordings of live performances on YouTube. But in my sophomore year of high school, one of my friends recommended me a musical that was like nothing I had ever experienced before, 36 Questions. I was expecting another cast album, but I soon realized that this was a podcast musical, written and recorded as an audio-only theatrical experience. But wait, hold up. Can a podcast even be considered theater? I mean, back then I definitely thought so, but looking back, I'm wondering if I've been thinking about this musical all wrong. To answer this question, I'm gonna have to go back to my roots to figure out what makes theater a distinct art form, how that art form's been remediated over time, and just where in the mix 36 Questions and other podcast musicals fall.
This will be the last thing.
While podcast musicals may be relatively new, audio theater has been around for over a century in the form of radio plays.
These programs were widely popular with listeners, but their storytelling capabilities were limited by the radio form. According to Dan McGovern of the Eugene O'Neill Review, audio playwrights had to abridge 2-hour stage plays to fit into 50-minute program slots, all while creating continuous tension to quickly gain and maintain attention, lest audiences, literally and metaphorically, tune out.
Just as radio plays remediated traditional theater for audio broadcasting, podcasting has remediated audio theater for the digital world. Podcasts can be any length, with 36 Questions clocking in at a little over 2.5 hours across its 3 acts. You don't have to tune in at a specific time every week, and you can start, pause, or rewind at any point. 36 Questions isn't the only example of a podcast musical, but it did pioneer the form when it released in 2017. Starring Jesse Shelton and Jonathan Groff, it follows Judith Ford, who lied to her husband, Jace Connolly, about her identity for their entire relationship. Desperate to save their marriage, she convinces him to ask each other the series of questions that brought them together in the first place. These 36 questions are part of a real-life experiment designed to make two strangers fall in love. And at the start of their relationship, Judith used these questions as an opportunity to create a better version of her reality, inventing the persona of Natalie Cook. With the absence of visual stimuli, writers of audio-based narratives have to get creative to tell complex stories like these through only dialogue, music, and sound effects. For 36 Questions, writers Chris Littler and Ellen Winter accomplished this by framing the story as a series of voice notes recorded on a cell phone, using specific sounds to indicate the start and end of a recording. If podcasts can be considered theater, then these starts and stops can be seen as scene changes, transitioning between the different settings of the narrative. The first 2 minutes of Act 1 introduce the audience to this setup.
Do you ever listen back?
I guess when I miss it.
It shows their 2-year relationship through a series of moments, and we learn about Judith, or Natalie's, habit of recording conversations on the record, and Jace's feelings of confusion and exasperation with her constant recording. Suddenly, the music cuts out, a voice memo starts, and Judith goes on the record stating the current situation. Jace left her when he discovered that she had been lying to him about her identity for their entire relationship, so she's driving to his family's house in the country to find him and make things right. From this point on, the voice memos last for longer, continuous periods of time, stopping only when needed to advance narrative time, like the transition from Act 1 to Act 2.
My name is Judith Ford, and it's been 8 minutes since my last recording. As you'll recall from the previous memo, everything was going swimmingly. We were all set up to dive into the 36 questions, when, of course, my phone dies.
Though the musical has no scenery or props like traditional theater, sound designer Joel Robb paints a vivid picture of what's happening in every scene. Kind of like how radio stations would use Foley artists to produce live sound effects for their radio plays. Robb creates the illusion of environments, distance, and movement all through sound effects and audio distortions.
Is that smoke gonna be a problem?
No, none of the fire alarms work.
For the record, Jace is opening a window. Ooh, for the record, one of the panes
Yeah,
just...
I think, can we cool it on the record for a sec?
Okay.
Can you bring me the bucket?
Sure thing.
If it weren't for the musical numbers, one might forget that the voice recordings they're listening to aren't real.
We never rented a house in Sedona. We didn't see Camille the day she died. We haven't been on our boat in some years now, so we don't care what you found inside. And it's our word, yes, our word.
I could talk about 36 Questions and how great it is all day, but I knew that if I wanted to determine whether or not it was theater, I was gonna need a concrete definition. I turned to the Cambridge Introduction to Theater Studies, which acknowledges that theater as an activity is very difficult to define, and what falls within that definition, as well as the specifics of the definition itself, are highly debated among theatrical scholars. And however, the text makes one thing clear. Theater studies has a strong focus on live performance in all its artistic, cultural, and generic variety. Although the asynchronous nature of podcasts is largely an improvement to 20th century radio theater, it may also disqualify 36 Questions and other theatrical podcast experiences from being classified as theater. By this definition, podcasts likely fall into the same category as television and radio, which certainly constitute branches of drama, but not of theater. However, while I can understand this logic, I'm not fully satisfied with that conclusion. I still engaged with 36 Questions like I did other digital media adaptations of stage theater, not like television, movies, or radio. I didn't engage with poor quality YouTube recordings of musicals because I really liked looking at grainy footage. I watched them because I connected with the stories, the characters, and the emotions being performed. I feel the same way about this podcast. If 36 Questions were performed live on radio broadcast, would it be considered theater then? I don't know. Whether I was truly a theater kid or more of a digital drama queen is up for debate. But I believe that podcasts take this art form and make it more accessible without sacrificing ethics or the power of narrative storytelling. And I'm not alone.
The podcast realm allows anybody in the country, no matter where you are, no matter what time of day it is, to be in a musical.
The actual musical as it's supposed to be listened to.
Not just the album.